Hey guys, welcome back. It is time to pronounce Pokemon names wrong. And another video based on a thread that I thought would make for a nice one. Again, something really awesome that you guys can comment down below if there are any names that you know that you used to pronounce wrong, that you still pronounce wrong, and you're sticking with it. I know two that come to mind, for me at least. Definitely used to call Rayquaza. I know some people like one or the other. Apparently, Quaza is the correct one, as in Quasar, which kind of makes a lot of sense. But until you see or hear it somewhere, such as the anime, etc., there's probably, there's always going to be that up for debate. How do you pronounce it based on how it's spelled? If you're not around other people that are saying or pronouncing it, then you know what? You might not ever change. And that's about it. The other one that really comes to mind is Silvally, which I definitely used to call Silvally. And I think those are probably the two biggest ones that, after hearing what they actually were, the Silvally was a kid, actually, that was picking up some Pokemon cards, and they corrected me on it pretty hard. I learned my lesson that day. But I think at that point I didn't, or I hadn't heard it in the anime. I've since watched the anime, definitely watched all of the Sun and Moon. I think there's some Sword and Shield at this point, or I guess it's Journeys, Extreme Journeys, Super Journeys Plus. At this point, they didn't really call it or name it or necessarily entirely base it off Sword and Shield, but we're gonna call it Sword and Shield because they're all over the place. But mainly, I think the characters and the new Pokemon and the Gigantamax stuff. It's still Sword and Shield by my books. All right, so the post here by Alyo, who says, I'm very curious about this. I think it's a fun topic, whether it be due to not seeing the anime, which I think is the biggest contributor to certain name pronunciations sticking, viewing a written material cards, or hearing it said a certain way from a friend on the playground. I'm curious if anyone has some names that might be mispronounced or used to. I shouldn't even say mispronounced, but just said differently, since I don't think that there's a right or wrong way. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think there were a couple that there were no determined way, since like official sources had it two different ways. So it could be that some of them you can pronounce them one or the other. If anyone can think of what those are, please let me know. I'm sure there's somebody out there that knows. I just find some amusing. Brings me back to Playground Rayquaza pronunciation disputes. Personally, back when Sun and Moon came out, I kept reading and pronouncing Guzma's name as Guzma. I've heard that too quite a bit in my head, so when I said it aloud, my sister and others pointed out that it's pronounced Guzma, which kind of floored me. It's too late for me though. Whenever I see the name Guzma, my brain defaults to Guzma. Probably always will, which also sounds cooler than Guzma in my opinion. But what about others? All right, we have a stagecoach here. There's only one for me. Wismer and Whimser, but I'm pretty sure I have them all down otherwise. So what do we have here? We have the only Pokemon I struggle with is Reuniclus. I don't know if I've ever even heard that Pokemon's name said, but I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. For 10 years, I thought it was Reniculus. Okay. When I saw the correct spelling after all those years, I tried to get it right. I thought it was Raiculus. Raiculus? It's neither of those, and my brain hates it. But I'm pretty sure I have them all down otherwise. Oh, Rattata is definitely a big one, and definitely has been over the years. We have Jabby who says Rattata. Still not 100% sure if it's Rat-ta-ta or Rata. Ratata, I think, pretty sure. But yeah, I've also heard some Ratatatas, a lot of variations on it. So, Alyo, Reuniclus seems like it could be tricky. Yeah, and I don't think I can't remember it ever being in the anime. So, and it's not brought up very often. So, definitely a difficult one. Jabby, oh yeah, true. The sudden stops in Rattata from T's messes my brain up a little. I also sometimes flop between Aaron's name as Aaron and Aaron, which both sound a little off. Mars, Arceus with a soft C, not Arceus. I will die on this hill. So yeah, there's definitely, I think maybe that might have been one of the options where source material referred to both the soft and the hard K-C sound. I always say Arceus, but I'm pretty sure I used to say Arceus. I think both are fine in that case, but if anyone knows for sure, pretty sure Arceus is the more common proper one that's used in the source material, but I'm pretty sure Arceus was as well at some point. All right, we have Adil who says, just curious, did you watch Pokemon Arceus and the Jewel of Life, or other movies series where Arceus is referenced? Maybe I do say Arceus. Arceus? I don't. All right, we got to watch Pokemon Jewel of Life, because that'll give us the answer. But Marta says, I honestly was so mad in 2009 as a stupid 11-year-old. I refused to watch it when it came out, looking really forward to watching the new special in September. Dill says, to be fair, the Japanese kanji does read Arususu. I probably absolutely butchered that. So your pronunciation may be more similar to the intention of its creator at Pokemon. Aoyo, you're not alone. I'm in the Arceus group and will probably never shake it. G1T Landon says, I say Togetic. I know some pronounce it Togetic. I would agree with them, but then we'd both be wrong. Yeah, I just go with Togetic. Togetic. Maybe more of an E sound than an A sound there, but Xyleets, I always wonder about the Mon ending in noir. Is it supposed to be the French pronunciation Noah, or is it supposed to be Noir? Sometimes this makes sense, other times I don't freaking know. So I would imagine that it's a dark Pokemon. We get Dusk Noir. I don't know if the French pronunciation is definitely not Noah. It's more like a noir. I don't know. It'd be a tough one, I guess, if you're not familiar with the French word for black. Sometimes this makes no sense. Other times, I don't know. Sini says, you could probably say I mispronounce everything because my pronunciation of Pokemon differs completely between English and Finnish. Yeah, that'd be rough. I know with the Germans in the Discord, some of the names are pretty wild, and I can only imagine to be able to learn all 900 Pokemon in English and in another language. Lane Ward says, Suicune. As a kid, I first read it as Suicune or Suicine, and that's that. Stagecoach, I think if you were a 90s kid, that Suicune was the first Pokemon name that they really threw you for a loop. Suicune, Suicune, Suicine. Every kid had a different way to say it. Then when Crystal came out, there was the character Eugene, who was obsessed with Suicune. Eugene's name is like Suicune turned inside out and just made it all the more confusing. Possibly. Hollow Shedinja says, Arceus, without the hard K sound, Arceus. Thought Fanpy was Fanphy for like 20 years. I know there's definitely a lot of people that thought it was Fanphy. For some reason, they wanted to put the extra PH at the back end of it, but proud to say I at least got Suicune right back in 2001, at least. Crying face. MJY1130 says, I've had heated arguments with a couple friends about how to pronounce Zoroark. They are adamant that it is properly pronounced Zoroark. Zoroark or Zoroark? Whereas I'd always said Zoroark. My kid brother had a pretty official Pokedex app on his 3DS with voiceover pronunciations of all Pokemon up through Black and White era. And that voiceover agreed with the Zoroark usage. Didn't matter to my friends, LOL. We have SM Pratt, who says celeb I, like celebrity, even though it probably makes more sense pronounced as celery. Celery, yeah, definitely does. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone else call it Celebi or Celebi instead of, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Moss Deep, straight to jail. Coop 13, this was mine, but because I've always said it, Rat-a-tat-ta. Rat-a-tata? Yeah, I've definitely heard that before. Stagecoach, how do I dislike a post? Dill, I was going to say straight to hell. Double eyeballs. Papa Frank God, not mispronounced, but here, as we speak another language, we call some species a bit different. For example, while in the US they call Gyarados like Gyarados, here it's more like Gyarados. And I don't mispronounce a single Pokemon name. Everyone else just pronounces it wrong. I don't know about that. Cerulean says, I had always done the same thing for melodic because it is spelled like a Serbian surname. Having watched sports for so many years, you see a lot of Serbian players, so you get used to it. For example, there was a player in the NBA named Nikola Mirotic. Not sure if that's even how you pronounce it, but his last name is pronounced Mirotic. Mirotic? I don't know if that's supposed to be like a T-I-K. Mirotic. So for that reason, I had always pronounced melodic as Milotic. Milotic? All right. Interesting. Xyletes, who says, nice. I always pronounced it Gyarados because that's how James pronounced it in the anime, and it just stuck with me. I can't remember how he pronounced it. It's been a while since I watched through the entirety of it. Stadium, I think, combined with the Gear, such a complex name. I also use Japanese names sometimes since that was my first introduction. Hatsamu equals Sizor and Rayquaza equals Rayquaza for me, for example. I love how you pointed out on Patreon every time too, in reference to Scott's, SM Pratt's wrong pronunciation of Celebi. DDK says, I remember there was one kid in elementary school that would always mispronounce Psyduck as Pissy Duck. I guess PSY equals Pissy. My parents also used to call Ho-Oh as Ho-Ho. Definitely seen that before. For the longest time, I would pronounce Smeargle as Semirgle. Oh, seriously, don't ask. Reading is hard. It sure is. Pigeon Syndicate, who says, seems no one else mentioned it. I used to call Kyogre Kyogre instead of Kyogre. I believe I used to call it that because the name was similar to the Great Bay Temple boss in Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Gyorg. Okay, I don't even know if that's how you pronounce the Majora Mask, but I'm assuming so. As a kid, I thought the names were very similar, and as such, just rolled with it. Oh, also the quintessential Rayquaza or Rayquaza. I still can hardly decide. And I am also on the Arceus side due to the Japanese pronunciation as well. Arceus sounds dumb to me. Cringy face. Crosscards. I've always pronounced Dialga as Dialga instead of Dialga. Dialga. I think I say Dialga. And Palkia as Palkia instead of Palkia. I think some of these written out pronunciations are probably not perfect, or my representation of them might not be perfect. We have SM Pratt, who says, I pronounce this pincer, but I've heard people say pincier. I don't know. I think most people call it pincer. Nachi, I always default to Japanese style pronunciation if I have no idea how to say a character or Pokemon's name, since Japanese is phonetic. Sometimes the English pronunciation will override the way I say Pokemon name, though. For instance, Raiku is Raikou, but in English we say Raiku. Entei is Entei. Enti, but in English we say Entei. Suicune is Suicune. Suicune, but in English we say Suicune. English Pokemon use a lot of puns, portmanteaus, Celebi like celery, Orangaroo like orangutan, plus guru, decidui like deciduous trees, so that approach to pronunciation takes priority over Japanese style pronunciation. Okay, so we have Pigeon Syndicate, who's got some, I think, some corrections here. We have Raiku is accurate. In Japanese, it is this, so it does have the elongated ko sound instead of ku. Raiku. Entei in Japanese is the same as entei in English. The English spelling is the exact same as the characters in Japanese as well. It is spelled, that last is what turns the name from T into Te. With Te in Japanese, it tends to form the same type of pronunciation as T-A-Y. It can be mildly distinct from that Te sound, but that's only when you get deeper into Japanese study where it may matter. Suicune is also the same in both as well, or at least very close. In Japanese, it is spelled like this, so there isn't a ne sound in that name. The last character is just straight up. It's just a straight up N sound, so it should be pronounced phonetically as Suicune. But we say Suicune with the unelongated U sound. In Japanese, the U sound should be quick. So if it sounds like I'm destroying your post, I don't intend it to sound argumentative, just kind of hard to correct without sounding like a know-it-all. I just figured the knowledge could be helpful given the topic in the thread. Nachi says, not offended, very informative. I actually never looked at the Japanese spellings of the legendary dogs. I just assumed they were direct Romaji translations of the katakana hiragana, nor have I heard them spoken. So I assumed the A in ente was just a long E, like sensei, and I'm guessing they completely rewrote Suicune to help with English pronunciation. Interesting. I'm not a native speaker, so I'm curious what makes the A in ente sound like A. Can you elaborate? Does an ente come from TEI as in emperor? Edit, I just realized all Pokemon names are written in katakana. All right, we got another very long post here, but let's go through it. In Japanese, lots of sounds get mixed together, much the same as in English. If you read something like masu, phonetically, masu, the U at the end is hardly ever pronounced. Before I start the following explanation, just note that it is very hard to describe without actually having some type of audio to accompany it. Edit decided to find clips, so if anyone wants to check out the clips, I'll put a link to the thread in the description. You can go check it out. You're correct that sensei is more or less the same, but it is often shortened, as well as just because it's easier and it's such a common word. Probably the most similar example to entes, but with different characters, is something like tenu, meaning emperor. That new part actually has a very slight U sound that tends to be quickly voiced. And to most listeners, it may just sound like an elongated O sound. However, if you pay close attention, though, it is actually pronounced no you. Not every speaker does this, though, so it's not a perfect science. It may be generational, as in older generations are more likely to follow the stricter pronunciation, whereas younger generations prefer to shorten the words. And te is the same. That te tends to sound like te to foreign listeners, but is more closer to te-I. That I at the end tends to be subtle and is often overlooked. Cool. This guy completely skips the I sound and just says enti. In this clip, you can hear it's a little bit longer of a pronunciation, closer to the te in English. If you really closely listen, you can hear a slight uptick in the speaker's E that shifts into and I at the last second. Replay it a handful of times if needed. I forgot to mention the reason for the important distinction is that some words sound similar but are actually drastically different words. For example, we have a grandmother versus aunt. That slight lengthening is crucial for the meaning of the word. With Pokemon names, it's not as crucial, but I've definitely had moments where I didn't elongate a syllable and people looked at me with quizzical faces. Haha. I hope that makes things a little more into perspective without being too wordy. My descriptions may be tough to follow, so it's probably best to just watch the clips. Silitz says, always love your posts, and now I want a legend-style game in Johto about Ekritique City. Nachi. Clips were very useful, but to me it still sounds like a long E. Te not te. T not te. But you're totally right that there is a hint of the I in it if you listen closely. It feels like it's somewhere in the middle, but I definitely trust you since you live in Japan. Thanks. And all right, let's see what else we got here. We got Josh, who says, as a kid, these were some of my worst offenders. Tangela, I would always say Tangela. Ammonite, I would say Omanity instead of Ammonite. Gyarados, I'd say Gyarados instead of Gyarados. Or you'd say Gyarados instead of Gyarados. Somewhere I have heard Magnemite said as Magmate, and was hella confused. Maybe it was a joke because I swear in the anime it was pronounced the same as might. Those darn Latin vowels. Oh, here we go. We got Alyo, who gives us the Alomomola name pronunciation, never registered and still trips me up. I keep wanting to call it Alomola. Same. Instead of just feeling my brain slow down when I have to read its name. Maybe that would have been fun name if it was from Gen 7. Also, why isn't it a love disc evolution? That's the second most confusing part about it. So yeah, that's a tough one, and it's not something that like ever comes up. So Alomomola. It's like a tongue twister in itself. Pigeon Syndicate. I totally forgot about this Pokemon. Reading its name in your comment, I couldn't get it right at all. Definitely requires slowing down. Also, I second that Love Desk evolution part. It doesn't make sense why it isn't the evolution to it. And that's it. That's all for the thread. Again, guys, let me know down below if you have any to add to this. If there's any of the above that you say. If there's any of the ones that I said, how I pronounce them. If you think those are wrong. If you disagree. If you agree. Whatever you got to do. Leave it down below. Make sure you join the Discord. And I'll see you next time. Bye.